Galvan. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and Personnel. I want to begin by thanking you for joining us tonight. I'm going to begin by just addressing a little bit about Zoom webinar and the protocols that we use when we have a meeting like this. We're going to be working our way through tonight's event. We'll be doing some screen sharing. We're going to explain a whole lot of things to you. And at the end of all of that, you'll see down at the bottom, there is a little box with little, I don't know what to call them, question clouds, where you can ask some questions, and we'll make every effort to answer your questions live during the presentation here. We are recording this forum, so please keep that in mind. And we'll also be saving your Q&A questions. We don't anticipate that we'll be able to answer every single question, so we will take them with us. We'll analyze them, do some research, and prep some responses for anything that we can't enter tonight. I want to start out by introducing the panelists. As I said, I'm Mrs. Galvan. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction and Personnel. I'll let the team go through themselves. It's hard because I can't see them, but I do know they are out there.
I'll start. Kristen Enright, Executive Principal at Paul V. Moore High School. And Jen, you want to go next? O'Malley.
Hi, everyone. Jen O'Malley. I'm Assistant Principal at Paul V. Moore High School.
Chris.
I'm Chris Solori, Assistant Principal at Paul V. Moore High School.
Damon.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Damon Villeneuve, one of the Assistant Principals at Paul V. Moore High School.
This is Matt Penrod. I'm Building Principal at Central Square Middle School.
Good evening. I'm Jeff King. I'm one of the principals at the middle school as well.
And Mrs. Smolnik is in and out depending on how her internet is functioning at the time.
All right, I'm going to bring you back to me. I just want to again say thank you. There's over 200 people here, and even though this is not our normal way of doing things, we really appreciate that you all took time to come out with us tonight. We know that we've already sent out a great deal of information that you may or may not have had an opportunity to read. We put together a frequently asked questions booklet. We went through and kind of brainstormed what might somebody ask us. We also put through a pretty decent description of what we think this hybrid instruction for grades 6 through 12 is going to look like. Some of the feedback I got today was, wow, that comes across kind of negative. And I want you to understand, we're excited to have your kids in front of us. There's nothing lonelier than our hallways at work. Not that I don't love these individuals, but I'd rather hang out with your kids. And so would our teachers. We don't mean to sound negative, but we don't want to mislead anybody. While we're taking a look at this and we are exploring this hybrid model, we want everybody to understand before they make any determinations and final decisions if they want to participate in it, to know exactly what it's going to look like. Because I've talked to some teenagers, and I just want them to understand it's not going to be like it used to be. It is going to be different. So we're just going to be very forthright in our descriptions of everything that we know so far. We're going to present to you the facts the way we know them to be at this time. So again, I'm going to start out with, we are very much in the exploratory phase of implementing this model. It's a combination hybrid model, remote, a little bit of in-person and some at home for grades 6 through 12. Since we began our instruction in September, we've already taken into consideration the need for certain students with specialized situations to return, and we started bringing back learners as early as October. Well, then we had an increase in COVID-19 numbers, as you know, throughout the counties. Many of those spiked right after Halloween, then Thanksgiving spiked some more, and then Christmas holidays took on even more. That slowed our process. We had already started some student bring back. Right now, I think between grades 6 and through 12, we have just under a total of about 200 kids coming in some fashion. When those numbers started to spike and the cases went up, we had to slow our process. As you know, the whole district went on an in-person pause for a while. The cases have gone down significantly, even in the last 10 days. So we're ready to once again take a look at that and figure out what are the strategies and the logistics to again increase the number of students in our middle and high schools. I will say that while we feel that the virtual instruction that we provided has been very successful, especially comparative to last year's model, we do know that we can do better, and we are looking to do better. And we're going to ask you some questions tonight. We're going to entertain some of your questions tonight. And we need some ideas from you as to what are the concerns that you have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the slides, give you all the information, and then we'll go into some Q&A after that. Please keep in mind, this is a draft plan. So we are still in the exploratory phases because there's a million different logistical things that we're still trying to take a look at and figure out what are the impacts of the changes, what are the increased risks that we're going to anticipate. We're going to go over those. What are the challenges that we're still facing? Things that, you know, some of you may have thought of, but others of you would not think of. And then hopefully by the end, you'll be able to make an informed decision as to whether or not you would like your child to participate in the hybrid instruction. So Kristen, maybe you could kind of go to our first slide. So the protections by executive order, as you know, Governor Cuomo issued a series of executive orders relative to the requirements to return to in-person learning. All of those are still in place. We are devising a plan that's going to maintain those orders and reduce the opportunity of exposure as best as possible. Some of the things we're going to continue to do. We're going to maintain our 6-foot social distancing rules for classroom, buses, movement throughout the building, etc. We will require masks be worn all day with scheduled mask breaks throughout the day and throughout the different blocks. We will require personal sanitization each time a student enters or exits a room. We'll ask them to use hand sanitizer, and they'll also get a sanitizing wipe for their workspace so they can wipe it down just to feel more comfortable. We are going to reduce and restrict movement throughout the day as best as we can, and we're going to reduce the opportunity for individuals to congregate in common areas. Those are things, unfortunately, that I think middle and high school kids are not going to love. They want to hang out with their friends. That's why they want to come back to school. Well, that, and they probably love algebra or something like that, or conjugating some verbs. But the biggest thing is they really want to be back around other people. We want them back around other people, but we need to make them understand it's not going to be the way that it used to be. So the very common question that I ask myself, and I'm sure all of you are wondering, is, so what's changed? If those governor's executive orders haven't changed, what has changed to make it possible for us to do hybrid instruction now? Well, there's several things that have changed, but they're all things that wouldn't necessarily be glaring to you. As you know, we changed our learning platform. We went from whatever we were doing last spring to Canvas. We were still training for Canvas as kids were starting instruction. So the Canvas platform, it's well established, it's running well. That's one of the big changes. We were still stressing as to whether or not we were going to have that up and ready to go on the first day of school, which is why we put 3 superintendent's days at the beginning of the year to kind of stall it and do some additional training. We had some construction challenges at Paul V. Moore. We didn't have any access to some of our large group areas, auditorium, cafeteria, and gyms, because COVID and construction didn't get along very well either. Those have been primarily resolved. The percentage of people wanting to return to in-person may have changed when we did this survey in was that August, July? We had like 97% saying they wanted to come back. Well, when you do that logistically, the most we could offer at that time would be possibly 1 day of in-person a week, and the rest of the time students would have been on their own doing asynchronous learning. We had heard loud and clear from parents, students, and staff, they didn't like the asynchronous plan that we had last year. So we didn't want to recreate something that we knew people didn't like. So we needed some time to come up with something different. So now we have a new preparedness with equipment and training to offer a higher level or a higher quality of synchronous simultaneous instruction. I totally made that phrase up a few weeks ago, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. So what is the new equipment? Well, we now have cameras. We have what's called a clear touch panel, which is another piece of digital equipment. We have the headphones, we have the appropriate wiring, and we have a new instructional platform and conferencing tool We've had to rearrange our furniture. We've had to move some out. We've had to get some storage units to put it in. With all of that, we are now better prepared to go to this, like I said, it's called a synchronous simultaneous instructional plan. So what is synchronous simultaneous instruction other than a phrase that Ms. Galvan made up? Well, the way I call it is, it's kind of like what you see here in this picture, which is really military school, but close enough. It's a lesson being delivered live at the same time to students that are in the classroom, so actual bodies in the classroom, and at the same time to those students who are at home via the live conferencing tool. By then we should be using just Zoom or Meets, I believe. So it's all happening at the same exact time. A lot of the universities are using this. They're going, like my neighbor goes a third, a third, a third. And so a third of the time they're at home, zoomed into the class. Another third of the time they're actually in the class. And then a third of their work is completely asynchronous. So what is hybrid instruction? One of the things, this is stolen directly from what we already sent home to you. So again, I'm reading it to you and I do apologize. The hybrid model, it brings learners in person 1 to 2 days a week, and virtual synchronous, the same that we have going on now, will occur the rest of the week. Wednesday learning is going to stay the same. And for most students, this is going to be an asynchronous day, but we do have some students that come in. We're going to establish a cohort based on an alphabetic grouping for each rotation. Secondary students in the same household will likely attend on the same days. We know that not everybody in the household has the same last name, so we'll pick the last name, and then any other kids that live in that household, even if they have a different last name, will still follow suit. Right now, we're looking at an A to, I believe it's LE. Is that right, Mrs. Enright?
That's correct.
Okay, A to LE for Monday, Tuesday, and then I'm pretty sure we probably don't have any, I'm pretty sure we don't have any LFs, but if we did, they would be, LF to Zs would be on Thursday and Friday. This may not line up with the elementary siblings due to secondary scheduling constraints. You have to remember the way, the very, very different scheduling formats for secondary students as opposed to elementary. Students are going to have minimal movement during the day. They're not going to be able to congregate with their peers at any time. There's not going to be any physical or close contact between the students, or we're going to make sure that there's not. We're going to make every effort to make sure that there's not. So I don't know if any of you have ever walked the halls of a secondary, especially a high school class. They're not going to be walking down the hallway holding boyfriend and girlfriend hands. No quick smoochies on the way into the class. It's going to be one side of the hall has them going one way, the other side has them going the other way. There's going to be distance in between, and it's going to be tough to maintain, but we're doing that out of safety to reduce our exposures. Once students are in the classroom, they'll be required to remain seated, and they're going to be required to remain masked throughout the entire class period. Every class will have scheduled mask breaks. And again, to reduce the possibility of exposure, no shared materials will be allowed. What does that mean? Well, that means when we're doing lab stuff and different things that we used to do, we have to really approach that in a different way, because we can't have kids sharing the materials because there's not enough time to sanitize and clean in between. Transportation, believe it or not, much of what drives the entire plan is transportation. We can't offer any in-person if we don't have the kids here. How do we get the kids here? Well, there's 3 ways. Primarily, most students will take a bus. Some students can drive themselves, and some will have their parents drop them off. So what's that going to look like? Well, kids taking the bus, they will have a temperature check on the bus, same as they do at the elementary level. And as long as they don't have, I think it's 100.4, or maybe, no, it's 99.9. So as long as their temperature is below 99.9, they'll be admitted onto the bus and they can come to school. We can fit right about now, depending upon, so no more than 20 kids, unless they all happen to be related and live in the same household. That gives us a little leeway on the buses. So again, the number of students we can actually transport by bus kind of drives how many kids we can bring back on any given day. So Paul V. Moore is going to use the main front circle for the bus drop-offs. Parent drop-off, we think at this time, will be at the back circle by the gym. There'll be individuals out there taking the temperature of the student before they ever get out of the car. As long as they pass the temperature check, they'll be released from the vehicle and they can enter the building, where they have to move right to their first period class. No hanging out in the commons, no going into the cafeteria. It's in and right to class. Students who drive themselves will park in the lower lot. I think that's what it's called, the lower lot. And we'll set up an entrance and a screening area in the math wing. Again, they'll have to go right to their first block class. Central Square Middle School at this time is still planning their bus drop off in the main entrance circle and a parent drop off at the music wing doors. Now I realize, I got thinking after I typed this, some parents haven't really dropped their child off at the middle school, so they don't know where that is, but we will make sure that there's enough signage, and I'll have Mr. Penrod draw some pictures and send them home and all of that before we get to that point. So what is it going to look like? Well, I have to move my own face out of the way here just one moment. So you'll notice there's a time change, and you're probably wondering, why is there a time change? We're going to have to move back to what our original start times were for both the middle school and the high school. Middle school is around 7:30. PV Moore started about 7:45. All learners, all of our instruction is going to have to start at that point. So both the remote and the in-person schedule is going to change. That puts kids in school approximately 6 to 7 hours a day. Well, why do we have to make that change? There's two reasons. And the primary one is we need to adjust transportation schedules because there'll be a whole new run for secondary students. And it can't conflict, it's the same buses and same drivers for the elementary. So we can't start later like we are right now virtual, because we have to have the kids in school and ready to rock at an earlier time so that those buses are then free to go back and get the little kids. We also know that we're going to increase the length of time closer to what they were normally. So at the middle school, I think it's going to be, Mr. Penrod, is it 40 minutes?
37.
37, okay. And then are we going straight to 80, Ms. Enright, at the high school at this point?
Yeah, as of right now, right around 80 minutes.
Okay. And a couple of reasons for that. One, the 30 minutes, when the teachers are teaching 30 minutes and all the kids are virtual, there's already a certain amount of loss of instructional time as they do their SEL and their attendance questions and get everybody logged on and whatnot. Well, now they're going to have two different things to do at the same time, the kids in front of them and the kids at home. So we knew we were going to have to increase the period times a little bit. The other reason we have to increase it is we have to fill the instructional day and get back to our regular minutes. And again, we have to dance our bus runs around the elementary kids. So we're going to put our schedules back to the way they were. A much smaller number of students will be present in the classroom, and all the following, we'll be following all the guidelines and the reopening plan that we had. It depended upon the size of the classroom. We think we can get, now when I say 10 students, I'm going to say bodies, because some of the classes have multiple adults in them. So we're looking at between 12 to 15 bodies in a classroom, and that'll include the teacher, the teaching assistants, and the students. That's about as big as we can do right now. We literally have had Mr. Brissett, who is head of our facilities, our director of facilities, in with his staff and these measurement tools, making sure that we have the right circumference circle around each chair to get as many people as we possibly can in each room. And every room will be different because it's based on the size of the room. So students are going to enter through a designated access point. They're going to move directly to their classroom, as we already said. And again, they do have to remain masked throughout the lesson. No congregating, no socializing. All the fun stuff's kind of gone. Once the students are in the classroom, the teacher's going to be teaching from a designated area in the front of the room. So what's that going to look like? So I'm up in the front of the room. I'm on this camera. Like right now, you see me, I keep looking away. It's because I literally have 3 screens going right now. The camera's on the one in front of me, but the one I'm looking at you on is to my right. So I'm really not zoned out. I'm just looking at a number of different screens. So the teacher's going to be teaching from their designated area. They're going to be looking at the screen to the students that are home, kind of like I keep looking up at my panelists here. And they're also going to be paying attention to the kids that are sitting in front of them. I anticipate that that's going to take a little bit of a transition. I don't think it's going to be perfect for the first couple of weeks because nothing's perfect when we first start it. So the kids that are at home, they'll be coming in through their computer, kind of like I don't know if you look at our backgrounds, we're all really at our own homes right now, I believe. I don't think anybody's in their offices at work, but yet we're kind of in your living room, kitchen, dining room, or wherever we are with all of you as well. The kids at home are going to be able to ask questions. They'll be able to ask them live through a chat, through a Q&A, whatever tool the teacher sets up. They'll even be able to work with the kids that are in the classroom. Teachers will have the opportunity to, have them still working through breakout rooms because they'll have their Chromebooks with them so they can still collaborate with the kids at home or the kids in their own classrooms. So the kids will have to have their Chromebooks with them every day also. Can you slide that up a little bit, Mrs. Enright? So again, like I said, this is a very new way of teaching and learning. We do anticipate that there's going to be some bumps in the road, just like anything when it's new. But I'm very confident that my staff will give it their all, and within a couple of weeks, it'll be good stuff. It'll be really good stuff. Next slide, ma'am. So breakfast and lunch, because I'm Italian and we have to think about food with everything that we do. We believe at this time that they're going to be offered as a grab and go model. What's a grab and go model? Well, it's like a bag lunch. We are looking at some other things right now, but right now we think that's going to be the best that we can offer. The kids will be able to go through the line. They'll be able to order, maybe even pre-order, grab it. Breakfast, they'll eat in their classroom in their first period class. We'll have to get additional trash cans, and those are some of the behind the scene things that we're going to talk about in a little bit of what makes things that we have to think about that other people wouldn't, like all the extra trash cans we're going to need, all the extra recycling bins we're going to need, just the things to do the throwaway foods. We aren't washing trays anymore. We don't have silverware, that kind of stuff. Lunch is still being explored as to the location. That is one of our logistical challenges that we're trying to solve. It probably will not look the same at the middle school as it does at PV Moore. The middle school cafeteria is where we put together, that's the main hub for putting together all the food distribution. So they've kind of taken over the cafeteria, and they need that in order to put together the distribution that we do on Wednesdays. Tuesdays. Wednesdays. Okay. So again, that's another challenge. Cafeteria tables, can't really use those. Right now, we're looking at bringing desks in that we can have us do the right circumference around it so that we can have all of the kids in there and eating. Or we're looking at if we had to do it in a classroom. Well, you can't really necessarily do it in a classroom if I don't have the right supervision in the classroom. So lunch is still a logistical challenge for us, but we will figure it out. And breakfast is going to be easier. So what's it going to look for my child on a non-in-person day? Kids are going to do what they're doing right now. They're going to log into their first block class, same schedule. They're going to get simultaneous instruction. Students who don't log in will be considered absent, but they will have their access to their asynchronous lesson, same as they do now if it's their non-in-person day anyway. So what are the changes my students going to face if we move to a hybrid model? So one of the things you have to realize, if we go to this hybrid model, every child's going to face a change in schedule, start and end time, whether they choose virtual in person, whether they don't. If we follow through with this, that schedule has to change. And again, that's because of busing. Students will be required to be in person longer and logged into their computers longer, which does mean an increase in screen time than they've already been used to this year. Students who sign up for in-person can't simply choose by day. If you say you're going hybrid in person, then you need to be there on the day of your cohort. Anytime you're not there, it needs to be because of a medical or other legal excuse. And then they can do the virtual that day, but we will expect a legal excuse. You know, did you have an appointment? Were you ill? Did you have a family matter that you needed to attend to? And it has to fall under the same guidelines for legal excuses that we have now in our board policy. Once a student chooses to be 100% virtual, they can't move into the hybrid partial in-person. Why not? Well, because once we get those classes established, and I'm really glad that I am not Mr. Penrod or Ms. Enright as I try to go through and figure out how to balance my classes based on an alphabet cohort and what to swap around. I'm really glad I'm not them. And then once you do all of that, and then you get the bus runs all set up, we can't just make quick and simple changes. We are shooting for, the first week in March to start this. And that's already going to be we're really hoping we can pull that off by March 1st. How's that? I have positive intent. But it's a lot of work, but we're determined. So the cohort rotation will be based on the alphabet by primary household last name. The reason is the matrix required to balance the classes and the buses. And again, so we've already started getting emails that said, I understand that's the rule, but my child has a different scenario. We're going to look at them, but we probably won't be able to honor many because the primary thing is getting the right number of kids on the buses so we can get them there at all and make sure that that number matches the number in the classes based on what we can do legally. So it's just not going to be as simple as, but I would really prefer if my kids can go on such and such a day. It just won't work logistically for us. So if we say no, it's not going to be because any other reason other than we really just can't meet all the logistics and satisfy every individual choice. So what are gym class and music class going to look like? We're still exploring that. We haven't really done a whole lot. I do know that there's specific parameters because of droplets associated with exercise, singing, and musical instruments, and we'll have to follow those guidelines as well. We haven't even begun to look at that kind of stuff yet, but we'll figure it out, and we'll make sure that the kids are as safe as possible in those scenarios. Is it going to look like it used to look like? Nope. Might be better, who knows? So if my student is 100% virtual, will the schedule still change? Unfortunately, yes. If we do this at all, everybody's schedule is going to change and we're going to have to go back to an earlier start time. And that's the only way that we can maintain and maximize the live synchronous instruction. So I get it. I've heard, I've been messaged, emailed, and called by a number of teenagers that really like starting later and getting to sleep in. I get it. Unfortunately, we can't do both.
Ms. Galvan, I'm just going to chime in that your schedule itself won't change. The classes you're taking, the times that the periods are offered is what's changing. So your child's schedule and teachers they have will not be affected. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. So can my student choose back and forth between virtual and in-person? Just want to reiterate, once you choose 100% virtual, we ask you stay virtual because of logistical planning for class size, transportation, and our supervision needs. We know we're going to have to go out and find, one of our logistical challenges is the supervision. I need more people in the hall. I need more people to supervise lunches. I need more monitors. I need more temp takers. All of those increased staffing needs, they come with certain things. It's going to increase costs. It's going to increase just trying to find the people is not easy. We've already been trying and it's just not that easy. People aren't exactly anxious to come to work right now in a COVID world, and I understand why. I'm anxious. I like going, but some people think I'm weird. So if you start hybrid in person, you can change if the circumstances related to COVID change. Let's say you're personally exposed, you're in quarantine. We do ask, if you choose the hybrid model and we put all of this in place, we ask you to stay with it unless you have a legal excuse to not be there. You're not going to, if somebody signs up and says, okay, Monday, Tuesday are my in-person cohort days. Oh, it's cold out, I don't feel like going. Nope. We expect you to be there, or it's going to be considered an illegal absence. We need you to be there if we're going to put all of this together for you and try to keep track of you. So, as I said, back in July, we had like 97% of our district wanted to come back. Logistically, we just couldn't do it. So what if too many people want to come back, or what if not enough people want to come back? Well, the survey is going to go live tonight. You've already got the link. The link will go live. Ms. Enright, did you tell me after 7?
7, as soon as 7 o'clock hits, it'll be live.
Okay. We'll be monitoring those results. You have until Thursday night, I believe. Is that correct, Ms. Enright?
Yep, 11:59 p.m. on Thursday night.
To make a decision. We'll be watching closely, and we will take all the data. We'll take the input in the survey, and then we'll make a decision how much further we take this. We may not be able to do 2 days for every student. It might be 1 day a week. It all depends on the numbers. We promise you, we give you our word, we want to do the best that we can, and we'll take the data that we're given and we'll make our decision accordingly. So way back on slide 1, I talked a little bit about what are some of the increased risks. It's a pandemic. The more time we spend together, the more people you put together, the more risk of exposure and the risk of quarantine. So what does that look like? And why is that different from elementary to secondary? Why is it a higher risk for us? Our kids change periods several times a day. Every time they change, they have become exposed to a new group. And when they become exposed, if there's a quarantine, that quarantine becomes a higher risk by every time you change periods. And there's no real thing we can do about that. Secondary classes change periods. Some people have said, well, why don't you have the teachers change? Because not every kid takes the same schedule. Me, for example, would not be in advanced math, but I might have been in advanced ELA, and I certainly wasn't in advanced Spanish, but I probably would not have gone to an advanced math class. So I'm going to change. My cohort of kids is going to change every period. So it is going to increase the risk, which could increase the exposure, which could increase the quarantine. So one of our concerns and challenges is if people get quarantined, including our staff, what's that going to do to our instruction? Some cases, teachers might be able to teach from home, but it's going to increase our need for substitute coverage. It's going to increase our need for substitute coverage, bus drivers, monitors, custodians. So again, these are all the kind of things that we've been looking at right along. What's changed? The cases have gone down. They kind of spiked for a while. We're on the decrease again. And the percentage of our staff that has or will be vaccinated by then. You know, from the survey that I saw today that Mr. Colabufo put out, we will have a pretty significant amount of people that have already met the vaccine requirements, and it'll reduce the opportunity to face a quarantine and to become ill. So again, that's another change, why we're a little more confident than we were maybe in September. We aren't making any promises. We just, other than we're going to do everything we can to make it better or the best possible instruction that we can. Ms. Enright, got another slide for me?
Just the last one, we already hit upon it. I think we put 10 p.m., but we know just like students, we'll tell them 10, but it's open till 11:59 on Thursday night. But that is it. We do have 33 questions already starting in the Q&A section.
All right.
I will stop my screen share for right now. And is it easier if we just read, starting with the top one, read the first question aloud?
Sure. Who's going to read them? Me? You?
Doesn't matter. I can read them. Will the students be attending tech, art, facts, science labs, and so forth?
2 barks means yes, I believe.
Matt, do you want to answer that while she?
I will answer that one when Miss Galvan deals with the dog. Yes, they will be attending those classes at the middle school. That seems like a middle school question. Yes, they will be attending them.
And same for the high school. Again, their schedule, their classes stay the same. We're not taking any classes out of their schedule. Next question. Will the students, here we go. Okay. Will the students be able to socialize with their peers in a safe manner? I would hate to see them moving around in a silent zombie-like movement.
I think we've already answered that. They're sitting, so the 6-foot space, I've gotten pretty used to talking to people 6 feet away and wearing a mask. So yeah, they'll still be able to do some collaborative work and talking then. Like I said, when we're trying to figure out the lunches, they'll be socially spaced. They'll be able to communicate that way. They just can't sit next to each other, just like anywhere else.
Will an effort be made for seniors that do not have classes every day to ensure they can be in school on a day they have class instead of a full study hall day?
That's a great question.
It is, and one that I honestly haven't thought of yet.
Right. So that's one of those ones we're gonna have to take a look at that, because I mean, it makes perfect sense. Just hadn't thought of it.
Yep, and it's similar to our BOCES students that, we want to try to get them here on the day they're not going to City BOCES. So something we'll definitely take into consideration. Have you considered how a student who wears an FM system would navigate the microphone usage in this scenario?
No, but that's another great question. We'll have to get with the tech team this week.
Right.
Why we had to invite you guys?
And their BOCES, audio as well. They'll help us out. Are you aware that the temperature takers on the bus work less than half the time? So the actual thermometers, I'm saying.
We'll, I'll forward that to what we call our COVID officers. That's Mr. Colabufo and Mrs. Ladd. I unfortunately don't really have a lot to do with that, but I will certainly let them know that.
Will there be an option on the survey for those of us to communicate that do not plan on busing our children at all?
Yes.
How will freshmen be oriented to know where to go for their first period classes? They have never been in the building. That applies to 6th grade as well. So I think we can assure you by saying we're aware that the 6th grade and the 9th grade need some type of orientation, and we will be working on that.
I think we should get Mrs. Enright and Mr. Penrod a GoPro, strap it to their foreheads and have them walk through the hallways and follow various schedules. Actually, that's a funny joke, but I did see that, and I want to say it was like Waterville, local school, just, like a Utica area school. They did something similar to that. So.
Sure, and just like the first week of school, we have people in the hallway, signs, directions. My son goes to AM BOCES. Would there be more days he could go? He only does 1 full day a week now. So BOCES is not changing their schedule. BOCES is affiliated with all the school districts in Oswego County. So unfortunately, that BOCES schedule will still stay. It'll be 1 day a week, not a half day, AM or PM. My senior used to park in the upper lot near the gym. So will she be allowed in the lower lot without any issues? Absolutely. I think Ms. Galvan answered that as well. They'll be parking down in that senior lot. What support will be provided to teachers so that they can manage the tech needs of online learners simultaneously with live teaching? So
we have some training that's going to be going in place. We have our tech coaches and our tech team that will we'll be working with them. Right now I have the two tech coaches, I never get how to say it, Dio?
Yeah.
I never get his name right. And Mr. Martin putting together some training to help the staff know how to do it both at the same time. We also have Miss Fritcher, if any of you had Miss Fritcher from Millard Hawk. She's been doing this for months. And she's also going to be providing some training to staff.
With the arrival times and class start times in consideration, how will the temperature checkers get them checked and to class on time?
We will get through it. We do anticipate that, the first few days it's going to be a little bit challenging. We kind of anticipated we were going to have problems with staff getting them in and out, but actually it went pretty well. So again, that'll be one of those things. We'll have to do the best that we can. We'll probably start out with a whole slew of people down there and then find out we really don't need it like that. Because remember, the temp checkers are on the bus. The majority of kids that are coming in through the bus, they won't be stopped on their way in. It'll just be the drop off in the student parking area.
What about kids who attend city BOCES? Will they be able to go each day? If not, how will they get to school when they only attend the second half of school? So they do go to BOCES for one full day. Their schedule still shows that they only have half-day classes. So we'll have to talk about the possibility of early dismissal or late arrival. Otherwise, they can be placed in a study hall.
That's a good question. See, I hadn't thought about that one either.
Right, they only have half-day schedules. If my child has a first block study hall, is a senior and drives to school, will he be allowed to arrive at the start of second block? And
Probably so, yeah.
right, we did start implementing late arrival about a year ago, so there's a process to that and signage, and as long as they're in good standing, that's something that might be able to happen. What if your child wants to remain totally remote?
Mark it on the survey.
Can the elementary day be expanded to a normal schedule? I'm sure that I'm not the only parent who relies on older kids to cover the gap from the end of the school day to a parent returning home from work.
We don't really have anything to do with that, but I can certainly take that question and forward it to the director of elementary. I believe that they aren't going to be able to do that, but I'm not going to say that because I don't know that to be exactly the case.
Will there be some sort of virtual tour in person to show how the school looks and where to go? Freshmen have never been. Okay, we got that. Sorry, guys. Will students still be able to bring a lunch from home?
Yes.
Can they bring their own laptops? Chromebooks have not worked well.
I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
I'll have to ask our director of technology. I don't think their laptops will work on our server. So I'm going to say the answer to that is probably no. But I do know that the Chromebooks will work better in the building than they do at home.
And we have the use of our GoGuardian alert system that works on all of the Chromebooks, and it would not work on a personal device. And that's just for the safety of our students.
And it's a big communication tool as well. That is how a lot of the personal chat between the adults and the kids go back and forth for feedback.
That's a good point. I didn't even think of that, and I think I answered a parent today. We'll have to make sure we get that out. It is simple to go by alphabet, but what about class priorities? I'm not sure I understand the question.
So whoever typed that, if you could kind of maybe type it again down at the bottom and we'll get to it with a little bit more clarity.
Can they decide to go back to virtual if they had intentionally decided in person?
I think we already answered that, but we would rather you didn't, because it's gonna, but if something happens and there's a really good reason, but we don't want to put all of this together and do all this logistics and hire the additional staff and then have everybody go back to virtual. And then I have all these things already in place. So we would like to reduce that from happening. But again, are there going to be circumstances that would cause it? Sure.
So the question is, why are interscholastic sports starting, but we can't do PE? And I don't think we're implying that we can't do PE.
Yeah,
Just-
we didn't say that we weren't going to do PE. We just have certain guidelines to follow that Section 3 doesn't. And I can't really answer the why on that.
If a student chooses 100% virtual, can he still participate in school sports?
Yes,
How will the children in tech classes and readings classes going to be accommodated on a by last name basis?
can you ask that question again?
Yeah, I think it's from the same person that asked the question earlier. We asked to restate, how will the children in tech classes and regents classes going to be accommodated on a by last name basis?
Possibly because the tech classes are every other day and Regents science classes with labs the lab is every other day. That might be the concern that they're expressing.
Oh,
They would be present. They would be present for 2 different letter days. So they would be there for, instead of every other day, they would be there for basically every 4th day of the class or the lab. I think I explained that correctly, but they would be virtual for some of it and they would be in person for some of it.
Who would we talk to about unusual family structures that impact transportation before we make a decision?
can you ask that again, Kristen?
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't see them all of a sudden.
Oh, you can't see the Q&A?
I can, not the questions you're reading.
Oh, I'm all the way up way at the top, probably because there's so many. There's 71 questions. So if we don't get to them all, we'll definitely have to.
We'll get to them all.
Okay, ready? Who would we talk to about unusual family structures that impact transportation before we make a decision?
So I'm not exactly sure what that question is, but the survey does ask you who are the names of the children that reside in your household. And you'll have to answer it for the different, for each student. And then if it's complicated beyond that, I would say you'll talk to the building principal.
My child's a senior and would attend Monday and Tuesday. I'm guessing based on the alphabet they were figuring. Tuesday, my child has study halls all morning and class last block. Can my child attend school just Monday?
Possibly. That's the kind of stuff. You guys asked us that one today and we hadn't really thought about that. So we're going to have to take a look.
What about the students?
Those will be the outlier situations,
Right.
and they're going to exist. Those outlier situations are going to happen, and we'll have to do some of those on a case-by-case basis. That's one of the other reasons why it sounds like, even though we started this 2.5 weeks ago, it sounds like March 1st is a long way away. It's really not when you have to do each one of these things individually.
So what about the students who have already been brought back in, 6th graders need support, IEPs, other special circumstances? Will they still be able to attend daily as they are now, or will they be restricted to 1 to 2 days per week?
It'll depend on at the middle school, it'll depend on what program they're involved with. And whether we can accommodate the size of the students in the classroom. So that's kind of to be determined based on numbers question.
Right. That's one of those, it depends on how many people want to come back and how many numbers we're juggling.
If people are anxious about working, why are we opening up the school?
I'm sorry, say that again.
If people are anxious about working, why are we opening up the school?
I don't know who's anxious about working, but we are doing what we can to make the most effective instruction possible.
Yeah. What if one of my kids wants to come in person and the other one wants to stay virtual?
That's fine.
Okay, so really, what is the benefit to doing the hybrid if the child will be sitting in class on their Chromebook to connect with at-home students? You're really just changing their location, still working online. The teachers can't do hands-on learning with in-person kids if they're dealing with online students at the same time. It sounds like a lot more work on our teachers.
It is going to be challenging for the teachers. It's going to be very different work. We're not going to lie about that. That's why we said there's going to be some bumps as we adjust. But they aren't going to just be sitting there looking through the computer at the teacher who's also 6 or 8 or 10 feet away from them. But if you remember, a lot of our assignments are already through the computer. What used to be our Google Classroom, now it's our Canvas Classroom. So they're going to need their Chromebooks just the same way they did when we were 100% in person. Kids use their Chromebooks a lot for collaboration anyway. You may not have known that, but they really did.
How are buses being sanitized between trips?
I'm not 100% sure, but I do know that we have to follow those regulations, and I've never seen how they do it. So I don't know if it's with the ionizer machine or the same process that they've had to use to do that.
Is the survey our commitment to online or hybrid, or will we be given an opportunity to make that decision once the final plan is released, such as number of days?
No, we need you to answer by Thursday night at 11:59.
That'll be the final answer.
That'll be the final answer.
Yeah, we
And then
can't,
based on that, we'll determine the number of days we can do,
right. We can't do number of days first. We need to know how many students.
because that's what drives the number of days.
Could we group children in same classes? Not sure I understand the question. We definitely don't want to bring back all the kids from the same class because we need the kids 6 feet apart in the classroom.
It might have, I think it may have to do with siblings or something along those lines. And it would depend on teams and stuff like that at the middle school. But potentially, if they're on the same team, that's in numbers, that might be possible.
How, if at all, will this impact the Red Hawk program? So again, the Red Hawk students will, if they are choosing in person, will attend likely about 2 days a week. And then we'll talk about what will occur on Wednesdays. That hasn't been determined yet. My son goes to high school on Wednesdays for the Red Hawk program. Will that stay the same? Oh, again, not, possibly, but we'll definitely communicate with the Red Hawk kids.
But I love the fact that that came up twice. That means that it sounds like Wednesday must be having a really positive impact, and that makes my heart warm. I like good news.
Why aren't you just increasing class time without implementing person learning? I'm assuming it means in-person learning.
We are, so I think the question would be, why don't you just increase the length of screen time? Because we are trying to respond to the same people that are saying their child doesn't learn that way and they need more in-person learning.
For students who choose remote only, will they be in their own cohort? Elementary does this, it helps keep the remote only kids. And then I'm gonna keep going. This would also allow those cohorts to keep current schedules with less overall screen time since they won't get the benefit of any in-person days, but they will have all the downsides, extra screen time.
We already answered that. We can't do synchronous simultaneous with different schedules. We need the schedules to be the same.
Will the student be looked at differently if we choose to keep them 100% virtual?
Not at all. If it's working, don't change it. You know, if it's working and everybody's okay and your student's doing well, no, you know, you have to do what's best for you and for the student.
To repeat, but in case they didn't hear, if you're 100% virtual, you can still do sports. Have you spoken to other districts that have been doing hybrid all year?
Yes, we have. We meet, actually, we just did another, about hour and a half this morning with the Oswego County schools. We've collaborated with countywide principals in both Onondaga and Oswego County. Yeah, we spend a lot of time talking to other individuals, finding out what's working for them, what's not working for them. Mostly they want to know what we're doing so they can copy us. But that's okay. I don't mind being a leader out in the forefront, but yeah, all the time.
Will there be advisements? That's a high school student, so I can definitely answer. We will likely have advisement And we're not sure where we're going to put it in the schedule yet. It's typically between first and second period. Between second and third period. There will be some type of advisement, but it will look different than the schedule you guys have right now, where there's advisement at the end of each class. And we'll have to recreate the advisements to figure out what advisements you're in. Is the survey request one per household or per student?
I believe it's per student. There's a whole lot of, so we had to have Mr. Martin help us. He's one of our tech coaches. Because he's much more skilled than I am. So there's a number of macros in it that if you answer one way, it'll trigger the next question. So it says
you log on to take it once, and at the end it asks you if you want to submit another form, basically for a different student. So,
and you can enter more than one student. Like I can do it for both of my boys. If one wants to be virtual, one wants to be away, or if they both want to be the same. The next one's about dropping their child off at PVM in the morning. What time is drop off? I can tell you it's close to 7:45, just so you can start thinking about times, but we'll have to get that information out closer to the time. Will you consider parent volunteers for hallways or lunches?
We can't do that. We have the whole fingerprinting, supervision. Again, that's more exposure. We're trying to limit the number of people coming in. I did think of that because there's nothing better than a good volunteer. And then we thought about all the complications from doing that. So we decided that we couldn't do that because of, again, volunteers are never supposed to be alone with students. They're always supposed to be with the supervision of one of the staff members. And that would be really hard to do, just to do it in the hallways.
For students currently going in on Wednesdays, will that continue? And it very well may, but again, it must mean Wednesdays are going well for some. So that's a good question. If my child comes to in-person learning and decides that it's too much of a change for them, will they be able to opt out at that point?
We'll talk about that. We would really rather not do a lot of that, but sometimes circumstances are what they are and we have to make changes and adjust.
Do you have information about BOCES? If they were not in a pandemic, he'd be going Monday through Friday for the morning and then finish at the high school in the afternoon. Now he is going on Wednesdays with the new hours. What is the anticipated arrival time? I don't know if they mean arrival time for BOCES. So BOCES is staying the same. Everything with BOCES is the same, and PVM is approximately 7:45 on our synchronous days. Will students be allowed to use equipment in tech and lab classes?
At the middle school, we're talking about how to do that and make sure that it is cleaned in between uses or sits for the proper amount of time. So that can be happening, which is obviously one of the reasons we want kids back in school.
But it's one of those challenges that we're trying to figure out how to do it best and most safely.
Right. We also know that the teachers are teaching simultaneously with students at home as well. So trying to figure out what that.
So it's hard to watch who's got a screw gun and run a computer. So a little bit more challenging than it was before.
How are you going to keep them separate in the halls to switch classes?
As best as possible with a lot of adult supervision, and we're going to have to ask the students to follow the regs and follow the guidelines, and if they don't, then they'll be sent back for virtual learning. Students that don't comply can't stay there, but they can't put people at risk. So if a student refuses to wear a mask, they're going to have to go back to virtual learning. If they can't behave in the hallways and stay socially distanced and follow the guidelines we put forth, they'll be sent back to virtual learning. It's not a punishment. It's just, you have to follow the guidelines in order to be there. And one of the things that we have heard from our colleagues in other schools is the kids want to be there, so they're complying. A couple of bumps here and there, but for the most part, because they want to be there, they are going to comply and do what they need to do to stay.
This one's long. So she does have concern about screen times. The students will be required to be on with a longer school day. Will a future survey be administered to the remote students to gather data on how they are responding to the increase in screen time? something.
I hadn't thought about it, but possibly.
Also, will the length of time between classes increase to allow for safe passage in the hallways? Typically was 5 minutes, and also to allow those students at home a quick break from screen time.
We're taking a look at all of that, actually.
With the anticipated March 1st start date, is there a protocol in place for those students, families, and staff who choose to travel outside of New York State during February break recess?
The governor's executive order is what it is, and we have to follow that as written with the appropriate quarantines and testing, et cetera. And again, it's February 1st. The governor could change anything between now and then, but at this point, whatever it is, we have to follow it as written.
What is the school protocol for students and staff re-entering the school after being suspect as COVID-19 positive? Will the school accept the rapid test as proof or the PCR test?
So that's already all in the reopening plan, and none of that has changed. So all those, the protocols that have gone out by Mr. Colabufo and the nurses will follow those exactly as they already have been and as they are written.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is PVM or middle school. If you are allowing parents to drop off, what's the earliest they're allowed to drop off?
We'll have to decide that once we get the plan in place and once we know what we have for staffing to take the temperatures. Because remember, we don't have a place for them to congregate. So they have to be dropped off and be able to go right to their first period class. They cannot be congregating anywhere.
How will SAT, AP, and Regents exams be taken? So we've already given, Chris, actually, you want to at least speak to the few exams we've given?
Sure. The SATs, ACTs, and the PSATs we've had, we've successfully conducted some administrations at the high school with all social distancing, et cetera. AP exams, I have not heard anything to the contrary, like that they're not going to be given. So I'm assuming that AP will forge ahead. With the New York State Regents exams, we still have no clarification from New York State, from the Department of Education, as to if June Regents exams will be offered. However, if they are, we'll do the best we can to make sure they happen.
And the AP,
I mean, we don't have a choice on that, so.
right, the AP exams weren't canceled even last year. They figured out a way to do it with the—
Correct. The AP exams last year were completed through the computer, through a locked browser, I believe it was.
Yep.
And currently New York State has no plan. It's not got a, they've requested relief from giving the 3 through 8 testing, but that has not been acted on by the current administration at the federal level. So we don't know where we stand with 3 through 8 testing. Right now, we're anticipating that it will go on as scheduled.
And one last thing too about SATs. We have an SAT coming up in May, and we have another one and an ACT coming up in the beginning of June. So if you're interested in signing up for those, make sure you visit the College Board website or the ACT website, because we still will plan on administering those exams at PV Moore.
What does reduced/restrict movement mean?
Just what it said. So we will just try to keep the kids' movement as minimal as possible. They used to be able to congregate in commons areas and things like that, and none of that will be able to happen. We're going to take a look at hallway movement, go one way down one side of the hallway. All I keep thinking is kind of like when you go to Walmart, because I'm inevitably heading down the aisle the wrong way. But those kind of things we're going to be taking a look at to make the passage as safe as possible.
If Cuomo lifts executive orders, will this be revisited for kids who choose virtual?
It depends on how he lifts them. If he takes them all away and we can just come back and be normal, yes.
Will proper doning and doffing of masks and hand washing be taught to help limit exposure, including proper use of hand sanitizer?
Yes.
What if there are more students in person than allowed for in the classroom?
That's when we'll have to change how often the kids get to come in to do in person based on the number of people that want to do it.
What if you opt into the hybrid for 2 days and you're only able to offer 1 day? Can you opt out then?
You opt in thinking you're coming for 2, but it only turns out to be 1. We'll be using the same survey results. So no, not really. Because again, we need to know what is the number of people that want to come back so we know whether we can do 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, I believe it says it in the survey too. You're opting into in person, whether it's 1 or 2.
1 or 2 days, yeah.
If we transport our student, would that impact days of attendance?
No, because we can still only have so many bodies in a classroom on any given day.
What does this mean for middle school students who are attending 4 days a week in person? Will they be dropped down 1 to 2? I think we answered that.
Yeah,
think we answered
potentially they will be. It'll depend on their programs and what classes they're in.
Will seniors be able to leave early if their schedule allows it? We will certainly be looking into that. Same type of early dismissal policy we've had in the past with seniors. Are kids in the same house going to be able to sit together on the bus or lunch?
Definitely on the bus. Can't promise the lunch times will be the same. Or that the cafeteria or wherever we figure out that we're having lunch may not be designed for that. They may not, depends on what it looks like.
And likely if we have monitors in there, they're not going to know their siblings and, oh, you guys can sit together, but the rest can't. So we'll
Right.
keep something very, very similar for all students. Will city students be able to attend more than 1 day a week? If not, will they be in study hall for half a day? So again, they'll only be attending 1 day a week. And yes, they would be in study hall for the second half of the day if they didn't leave early. Oh, I clicked, it brought me all the way down to the bottom here. Hold on, guys. I was doing good, but I lost my cursor. Will students that are coming on site to the high school presently because of poor internet at home still be on site on their virtual days?
Yes.
Yep. In a hybrid teaching model with in-person and remote, attention is usually paid to the in-person attendees and recorded for remote. Children at home are not as mature as the models that were provided as college and military, so this dynamic needs to be considered.
Well, we have it going on at the elementary, just so that you know. I've only seen 1 or 2 of them. We're going to do the best that we can with what we've got. And I am confident that our students will do the best that they can.
Can my daughter choose to stay at home but still be involved in drumline and marching bands? Yes, just like
Yes.
sports. What happens for non-compliance kids and or families?
Students that are non-compliant will be, they'll be sent back to do their virtual instruction that way. We will not tolerate the non-compliance in the building, as it puts too many people at risk.
Okay, I think this more, oh, there is a question here, sorry. This hybrid model has been tested in multiple schools this school year. I personally do not find that it was a success. The virus still cannot be contained at this time, and why would we add to the risk of exposing them to 2 days in person? This should not be something that is rolled out with 3 months left of school. And I think, again, that's why we're giving you the option to.
That's why you'll have the option.
Please describe the benefits to hybrid, as it seems this is very similar to learning from home with more complications.
Well, as I said, we are responding to students. Not all students are actually engaging when they're at home. Some of them are doing a great job. They log in, they don't ghost. That means they don't get up and walk away and just leave their screen with their name on it. And they're doing very well. If I were a parent, I would probably not change that. Other students aren't logging in, or they're ghosting, or they're doing other things rather than engaging. And some of the parents felt that if they were actually in a room with the teacher there, they would be more successful. So we're doing our best to make that option possible. again, the bottom line is it'll be what the student decides to make the best of, I guess. Again, if it's going well and your students are being successful, don't feel that you have to change it. I wouldn't.
Right. Will juniors who have gotten driver's licenses have permission to park at PVM? You know, we're certainly going to look at our numbers of in-person, and, you know, we are hoping that that will actually help us with transportation needs. So as long as we do have spots, the juniors will be able to park in the PVM parking lot as well. We'll get that information out once we know who's in person. When is this going to start?
As we said, we're shooting for the first week in March.
Chromebooks are expected to be brought back and forth every day for classes. Is it expected that students bring their chargers as well? This can be considered a risk.
I'm not sure what the risk would be, but I believe there's chargers in, what do you call them, Chris? Cows or something like that?
Carts on wheels, yep.
On wheels, yes. We have chargers in the building or in the rooms.
And if they bring them fully charged, their charge will last for the day.
Yeah, the goal is they bring them charged, but we definitely have some extras if they need it. This is my son's first year in the district in 7th grade. Will he be oriented before he begins?
We'll be working on all that, because even if he was not new to 7th grade or the school, none of our 7th graders have been to 7th grade classes in areas. They were where 6th graders were. So that'll be something we're working on throughout middle school.
What is the criteria for your temp takers or ancillary staff that you are looking for? How many and what positions?
If you go to the personnel page on our school website, we are looking for substitute monitors and teaching assistants. They're two different things, but that would be the substitute monitor application that you would want to fill out.
Just a comment.
Just feel free to fill it out, and then, you know, that would make my day, actually, if I could increase the number of people that want to be monitors. And again, you have to pass all the reference checks, and then you do have to pay to get fingerprinted and board approved, but certainly, please, personnel, go up under departments, personnel, and then follow the link down to the applications.
The plan for food distribution or breakfast lunch needs to be explained better when available, and we certainly will. Am I correct to assume you're not asking us if we want to do this hybrid plan? I'm hearing that as long as you can figure out the logistics, this is happening. The only question then is if a child will do fully remote or hybrid. That's question mark. Is this correct? And what if the majority on the survey want to keep things the same?
As I said, we'll take a look at all of that, and we'll meet as a cabinet and make a decision. If we have 97% of the people say, no, we don't want this hybrid model, we'll certainly take all of that into consideration and make a decision as a district leadership team.
What if I can only drop off and not pick up, vice versa with my child? Will my child have the option to take a bus? That is on the survey if you need AM or PM transportation, so you'll see that. How will you handle middle school students that will need to be at PVM for practice after school, like winter percussion? Will they be allowed to get off the bus there?
If it's an after-school practice, we'll be doing a sports study hall type thing, properly spaced out, depending on what time practice is. I'm not sure what time drumline practice is, but I know the sports practices start at 3:30, and we are able to accommodate those.
Can people who can provide transportation for their children be taken into account when looking at the numbers? Is there a way to sign away our rights to the bus for the remainder of the year to show true numbers for students that require the bus? I understand how crazy that sounds, but this is a crazy year.
Well, you kind of are going to sign off your rights. If you're saying you don't need transportation, we can't give it to you later, because we'll have already set up the run. So you are kind of going to do that on your survey. But remember, even if everybody decides to bring their kids, I still have to have the right number of seats to not exceed the bodies in a instructional area. I think that made sense. Did that make sense?
I mean, it did to me, but we can't see them. This is crazy. Our parking pass is going to be required for students driving to the high school. So again, I think we're just going to get the students into the senior parking lot, see how many we have. We'll have our officer down there the first week to see what we have, and I think we'll be okay without going through the parking pass process right away. Requirements for masks, types of masks, proper mask wearing needs to be reviewed, as not all masks are equal. I believe the elementary school has all the information for us, so we can get that out. What will be the determining factor on if we do the hybrid model? Is it the not enough or too many scenario? If we do not go hybrid, will classes remain the same time schedule the students are currently using?
If we do not go hybrid, I believe it is our plan to leave it exactly as it is, yes.
How do some students already get or have had the opportunity to come to school 4 days a week at the middle school, whereas other students haven't had that opportunity?
It has to do with their IEPs and the programs that they're in. And we sent that out. Matt, when did we start doing that? October?
I think we started way back in October, depending on the program, and then we started bringing in additional kids, and started with 6th grade, and we're working our way up.
So we already answered this question, asking about when will we know about the days? Can we drop from 2 days to 1 day?
Okay.
So again, when you're taking the survey, we're asking you to answer the question as if you might be coming in only 1 day or 2. And if this question has to do with the schedule, like your child has study halls all the 2nd day, that would be, a case by case. Will school beans be open for Paul V. Moore?
Probably not.
No, it's congregate. It's just too much congregation.
Although we miss school beans. It's 7:19. We'll go to 7:30. So we'll answer whatever questions we can to 7:30. And then what we'll do is we're going to say, Kristen, you know how to save all of these, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what we'll do from there is we'll probably come up with another FAQ. A lot of these I think were in our FAQs, but you certainly have given us some more things to think about.
How will the survey results be tabulated? We've received 2 surveys for 1 student. So they're all the same survey link.
Yeah, so
So just fill it out, well, because we sent it out as a text and as an email. So the link both links go to the survey. So just answer one time.
Okay.
Is there an issue with logistics for children that have 2 homes with separate parents? It's just a little trickier. I don't know about issues.
There might be for transportation, but we'd have to adjust it like we do under normal circumstances anyway.
Could you clarify when you're proposing to implement the hybrid plan? Sorry. Oh, wait. Nope. Soaring and then fall, question mark.
Spring or fall.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
We're
March.
shooting for the first week in March.
Would students with an IEP be allowed to attend more than 2 days?
Again, that all depends on the logistics and the spacing that we have.
My son is a sophomore and has 2 study halls on AC days and 2 study halls, on A and C days in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Can he add classes to make the most of his in-person time? If you're adding classes, you really want to make sure you're doing that this week or the beginning of next week with counselors, because once we get started, we don't want them to fall too far behind. But adding classes is always with us. Talk to the counselor, see what has openings. If a student is a BOCES student and drives, can he be a late arrival since they have 2nd half of the classes at the high school? Yes, we'll certainly work around those BOCES schedules if they don't, if they're going to be sitting here for 2 study halls. How many teachers are vaccinated as of today at the middle school?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I don't think we give that information out as well. So if you're adding on extra hours plus a day, why can't the day end earlier? 6 hours of screen time a day is difficult enough.
The whole, the hours are all based on transportation. Remember, the same buses, same drivers. And we have, with the elementary ending at the time they end, we have to go after that. Same buses, same drivers. That's the only way we can do it.
With the hopes that this goes through, will be consideration for junior prom and senior ball. We're in the talks with the senior advisors, who happen to also be the junior class advisors, but we're going to start with the seniors because we realize they missed their junior prom last year. So Wednesday we have a meeting with the class advisors and officers. So there's always consideration and things we're looking to, even if we have to replace something, what could we replace it with that would still meet the guidelines? So we are thinking a lot about our seniors and what we can do for them. And we're going to start the first meeting on Wednesday. It's going to take some planning. It is simple to attend by alphabet, but what about special needs and advanced classes? I'm not sure. We keep getting the same question. I think she might need to call one of the administrators tomorrow because I'm not sure I understand the question. She's worded, it's the same person's worded it a few times. So I'm sure if we talk, we'll get what you're saying.
Yeah. If it's a high school question, just call Mrs. Enright tomorrow. She's brilliant. She can figure out anything.
She didn't say you were brilliant, Matt.
And if it's a middle school question, the same applies to the middle school principal.
Yes. Exactly. Sorry.
Not awkward at all. Thank you. Luckily, there's only 250 attendees who heard you say that or not say that.
You know what I meant, Mr. Penrod. Listen.
Middle school question, call Kristen also.
Starting to get a little punchy here at 7:23.
I know. Okay. Is this starting in September or now? Again, March we're looking at? Okay. Thanks for all your efforts. The traffic at the middle school is already a nightmare. Please consider using the security staff to do traffic and perhaps facilities. Considered adding a right-hand only lane.
Thank you.
My daughter prefers to stay 100% virtual. I have a large concern with such a long day of screen time. She also gets overlooked now when asking questions. How will the teacher assure us that the virtual learners are included as much as those sitting in front of them during the class?
The only thing I can say is we'll do the absolute best that we can. Nobody intends to overlook anyone. And if it's a particular issue with a particular teacher and you've addressed it with the teacher personally, my next recommendation would be have a discussion with the building leader and see if we can resolve it that way. But start with the teacher, please. Always start with the teacher.
Okay, this is a question I believe we've already answered. If it says spent in class have to be on the computer, so I'm assuming it means if you're in class, they have to be on the computer, can't ask questions of the teacher standing in front of them, and can't collaborate with peers academically to solve problems or work on projects, social distance. What do you see as the benefit for sending a student to school?
They can ask the teacher. I guess there's some confusion. They can ask the teacher in front of them questions, and they can ask their peers next to them questions, and they'll still be doing collaboration in their classroom as well. I'm just saying the kids at home won't be left out of the collaboration. They may do a breakout room with just the kids that are virtual, but they may put some of the kids that are in person with some of the kids that are virtual. The capability, the digital capability to do that will be there. Did I answer that okay? Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Since you only have limited attendance, don't you have a number of staff, TAs, bus drivers, secretaries, etc., that can cross-utilize for temp taking and no socialization, no smoochy police?
We, believe it or not, use every person for all kinds of different means outside of what their jobs normally are. And I can't give enough kudos to my staff. Everybody's doing things that aren't in their job description to make this work. What we're doing now and what we'll be doing. And I am confident that they will continue to go above and beyond as they are, but we use every person, every minute right now. I think there's often a misconception because they don't see a building open with people wandering around that there's a lot of downtime. I assure you, everybody's being used. You never know what you're going to be doing. I've taken temperatures. We have everybody kind of bending over backwards to do everybody else's jobs if we need to. and nobody's complained. I have to say, I have the best 748 employees in the world because nobody's complained. They've just done whatever needs to happen to keep the ship sailing forward and keep it afloat.
What percentage of staff have been vaccinated, non-teaching staff as well?
I don't know the answer to that. I know it changes every day. And my understanding is a large percent of the staff have chosen to be vaccinated. But again, it's their right to be or not to be. We don't have any say in that at this time.
If you have children in the household with two last names, but one goes to the middle school, one goes to the high school, will they be going on the same days, or is that possible?
That's the goal because we can get more kids on the bus that way.
What kind of evaluation will be used to determine if this change makes an improvement in student performance? If so, when will evaluation be conducted?
You know, I don't know that we've devised a specific evaluation, but as always, the feedback that we get from, there's one thing I would have to say Central Square doesn't run short on, and that's feedback from students and families, between the direct calls to the superintendent, the emails to any of us. Like I said, I think my personal cell phone has become common knowledge throughout Oswego County. I think we get a lot of feedback. So right now we'll probably just use the same strategy for feedback that we've been using. At some point, I think it's a great idea to establish a specific evaluative tool. Those aren't as simple as one would think. Data-based. Right now, we do things like we have all different kinds of formative data that we gather, both at the middle school and at the high school. We'll continue to watch that data. It's instructional data. If we see things going up, then we can assume that this might have played a role, but there won't be any direct correlation to it went up because of this. If it goes down, again, I don't know that we'll have direct correlation to know that it's because we did this. But I am confident that you and your students will let us know. But as I said, please give it a couple of weeks. Nothing new rolls out smoothly.
Connie, it's 7:29. There are 238 participants still here, and it looks like 61 questions still.
Okay, so pick 3 more, like I said, and then you save these.
Okay.
Go through them. If it's anything that's not already answered in the FAQs, we can add to the FAQs, right? Because that's a live doc, right? Right, Kristen?
It is. It's a live document, so we can add to it.
Okay. So anything that we haven't already answered, but the downside of that is you're going to have to go in and read them and see if your question has been answered. We put a lot of hours into those, but I know it's a long booklet. So it's easier to just ask your own question and not have to read all the way through them. But I think Mr. Slory did a great job linking them by topic to make your search easier. So 3 more questions, Mrs. Enright.
Oh boy. Okay. Sorry, I've just been scrolling, trying to read them all. A lot of them we've already answered, so there's a lot of repeats. A lot of comments now. Can the teachers just record their lessons to prevent excess screen time? If they have any questions, they can just go on the asynchronous days.
There's no such thing as an asynchronous day unless you're just referring to Wednesday. But it is my understanding that lessons are still recorded if you need to replay them. Agatha and Greg Tweedy, your question's making me laugh, but I'm not going to read it out loud.
Oh, I think I went past it.
Sorry, it made me smile.
Oh, I just read it. Okay.
I'll answer the first part. Students can bring their own masks, but we do have the disposable creased mask with a little metal thing in them available should a student need an additional one. And then I'm not going to answer the other part, but let's hope so. 2 more. 1 more. Is that what I said? 1 more?
Yeah.
So I see a question here from Kelly. It says,
Okay.
If a child is found to have a fever while getting on the bus, will their siblings still be allowed on the bus? I don't know the answer to that question. That's a really great one. That's one I'm gonna have to check with the nursing protocols and take a look at. I think so, but I don't know the answer to that. All right, so as I said, that's 92 minutes of information and questions. We really do appreciate you hanging with us this whole time. I think that's the longest parent conference I've ever held in my 33 years of education. We will give us a couple of days to go through the rest of these questions. Ms. Enright, have you figured out how to save them? I really don't want to lose them.
I mean, it says, remember, it says it auto saves all of the questions, the Q&A section. So
Scared to death, but
I guess
okay.
we'll know in a minute.
All right. And we'll go through and take a look at them and do our best to get you the answers. Again, I want you to understand a couple of things. We are not trying to be negative in any way. We are doing the best we can in probably the most difficult scenario anybody's ever had to face. We have a lot of challenges that lie before us, but as I said, I have the best staff in the world. They meet those challenges head on. They're outside the box thinkers. We know it's not going to be perfect. We know what we've done hasn't been perfect. We know that what we've done hasn't been terrible. We have kids in other districts. We know that what we're doing here in Central Square in most cases far exceeds what's going on in other places. And we're proud of our staff and our students for all that we're doing. And we'll keep that fight up because we're Red Hawks and that's what we do. We stay together, we fight through things and we get it done. So thank you again for joining us tonight. Hopefully we've answered some questions. Remember 11:59 on Thursday. I think the link is open now. Happy surveying and enjoy your evening. Ms. Enright, I think you and I can stay on, or maybe our admin team, our panelists, just for a minute.
Yep.
And then the attendees, can you